Mr. Mayor. Let me see. It looks like we are live. And I just have to hit record.
I see the little icon. I just haven't heard it say go live yet.
Hold on, I'm having an issue finding the record button. You did?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Did you do the math? Did you do the math? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, it was trying to hide behind the subtitles.
All right, looks good. So we're ready to go.
We are ready to go.
All right, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, December 1st, 2025. Time is 6:05 p.m. This will be a work session. And we've got two topics on the agenda tonight. The first one is B1, and that's our 2026 through 2031 draft capital improvement plan, otherwise known as the CIP. Then the second item will be B2, which will be the 2026 Seldovia City Council priorities. And I guess, Heidi, I'll let you lead us off. I'm assuming you'll share, and then we'll just kind of walk through it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna share my screen right here. Hopefully, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So we're just on the agenda page here, as you mentioned. And there is a memo starting on page 3. Let's see. Just kind of walking us through the draft capital improvement plan. So this is the first official version of the capital improvement plan draft and can change as many times as you guys need. What we did is we took the 2025 2030 plan and updated all of the project description one-pagers with any current information that we have. I did not update the comprehensive plan section at the bottom of each page and how it relates to the comprehensive plan because I know we're in that process, but it hasn't been adopted yet. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg. I can do that if you guys want. You can see on the new projects that are being presented that it relates to the new draft comprehensive plan versus the 2014 comprehensive plan. The other big change is that we reformatted the plan per a suggestion from Councilmember Barber. Thank you very much, Councilmember. So when I was showing the table of contents page, which you guys may know, I really utilize that to see what projects we have in the plan in general and where they are at priority level wise. There was a suggestion that instead of having it be sorted by fund, to have it sorted by priority level. And I have seen other plans that are done this way. In fact, Homer's plan is done this way and can be a little bit easier on the eyes. So we are trying this. Please let me know if this format works for you. You will see that start on page 7 of the packet itself here, that new format in the table of contents, and I will scroll down to it and I'll just kind of work you through. So this, we'll be talking about the memo, but we'll work through the packet as we go. And I might do a little back and forth. So this is the new format. And starting off again with the introduction and table of contents, commitment to partnerships is moved up to the top instead of being at the back. And then jumping into the plan itself with legislative priorities, high priority projects, which if they're the same as legislative priorities, they may get removed that section might be removed and just be legislative. I've seen communities do that as well, but we could also have high priorities that are not legislative priorities. So it'll depend on how this discussion goes. And then we have our mid-range priority projects, long-range projects, and the collaborative capital projects. So I took the projects that were number twos. The number ones I put as a high priority from last year. Number twos are medium, mid-range, and number 3 or 4 became long-range priorities. The other thing that we did is if you look at the next page here, page 8, there's a list of projects completed from the FY 25-2030 CIP and then the projects that are funded. I'm hoping that this condenses the plan a little bit is by removing these pages. It's not to say we're not still working on them and that they're not actively happening, but then you are no longer seeking funding for them. So they're not in the plan as a project description. They're just listed. You guys will have to tell me if that works for you. They were previously still included in the plan as a one-page sheet so you could see it. They're still available because their one sheets are available from that FY 2030 CIP, but they're not in this existing plan as we move forward. So as we go through, if that doesn't make sense and we need to put them back in, let me know, but hoping that it does condense it a little bit and make it easier to work through. So, and that's this page here. So you can see these projects that are funded. So as we go through this plan, a couple of things to think about with the projects that are in the plan is if they need to change priority level, and what that priority level would be. If you could let me know as we, I don't know if we want to go through each item. Maybe we can just go through it in general here. I went back to that title page so you can see your high priority projects are the Block Street Sewer Line Replacement Project, the skid steer with forklift and brush hog, small boat harbor float improvements, municipal dock improvements, and backhoe. These were all level 1 priorities in the last year's plan. And 3 of those were included in and as a legislative priority requests. So you can find that if you want to look at it, resolution from last year's priorities on page, oh, it's towards the very back. Sorry, let me grab it here.
Hey Heidi, real quick too, and underneath of each one of the high, medium, and long range, those are in no specific order, correct? Those are just,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Yep, no specific order. And then also under legislative priorities right here, you'll fill this in and this is what we'll apply for or request from the state and from the federal delegation. But the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are there as placeholders. Those are not necessarily priority level. If we go to a page 129 of the packet, I know we got to jump around a little bit here. You'll see last year's resolution and the council chose not to prioritize those projects and just to list them all out. There was 5 of them, so I included 5 on that table of contents, but that's not a requirement either. You can have 1 project, you can have more projects, but 5 kind of seems like the general number that council has put forward the last couple of years. So here you'll see Jackloff, the funding match is no longer included because that is a funded project. The Block Street as listed still under that high priority. However, I will say that it is also partially funded because it is part of a planning project. And there could be benefit in waiting for that planning project to get done. That's through VSW. I just had a kickoff meeting with them a couple of weeks ago. They will be down here in mid-December with CRW is who they hired to complete that project. And that's supposed to be done mid-year next year at FY or in 2026. So once we have that, it'll have a preliminary preliminary engineering report for that project along with several other projects in the community. And then we can have a bigger discussion about which ones should be prioritized at which level. So that's a question I have for the council, is whether you guys want to keep it as a legislative priority, a high priority, if you want to move it down the list a little bit until you have that information back. Certainly something to consider because there is work being done on it. And then the energy improvements, fuel retail and distribution facilities also is partially funded. As you may remember, we are working on the roof for that building. There was two phases. One phase was the roof, and the second phase was to do some new electric and insulation and maybe another sewer line in there. That's another question that's included in the memo, is whether or not that phase two should still be included in this plan as its own description, or if it should be for future considerations as we work through page one. And then you'll see the three that are still listed on the table of contents. That's the skid steer, the harbor, and I know it's not showing here, but it was listed as a federal, even though wasn't on the resolution. We did apply for on the federal level, and that was, oh no, it is listed there. Okay, Block Street, Skid Steer, and Small Harbor. So those three are the remaining ones, and that Block Street's up for question, as well as if you guys want to include in the, sorry, what was I saying? As well as if you guys want to include in the fuel and lube phase two. So we keep that in the back of your mind. We'll keep going through this. There's a lot of information here. You'll see on this memo that there are some, as I mentioned, those considerations are listed. So Block Street priority range. The other thing that was recommended, it was removing Malcolm and Spillum access and utility development projects and the Frank Raby utility development projects, and to place them under future consideration. Also, not to say that they won't or can't be reprioritized, and that they're not still a priority of the city, but trying to defer that to when we think of a 5-year plan, which this is what this is supposed to be, and being able to make great informed decision-making choices with the upcoming housing needs assessment potential project that's in here, and the Safe Streets action plan, both being able to lead into having fuller and better conversations and understanding about housing and development in the community. So trying to, again, alleviate a little bit of and plan a little bit more responsibly of trying to do all the projects at once, right? Like get the plans, make sure we know where the priority levels are for transportation, where the priority levels are for developing and housing, if there are, and then refocusing and putting them back into the plan. So that's a recommendation. Leave it or take it. I did include it in here from the 2025 plan, so you'll see that as we go through the actual plan itself. The other thing that I took the liberty of doing is updating the value added building project. So the old value added building project is in here still, and you'll see it as we go through it. But something that we had uncovered in the city office, that's actually been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I've looked at it a couple of times, but dug into it a little bit more, thinking about these discussions we've had about during the comprehensive plan update, and discussions we've had with the chamber and with the Arts Council and different entities in the group about that waterfront lot. And there's actually a great draft conceptual plan I meant to bring the book with me, it's in here. And fairly in-depth plan from 2007 that included all of those things in that space. And so thinking back or looking back at the vision of the community from 2007, there have been some changes. Obviously, the value added building was built and the two lots at the far end were leased to Sisbury, but there's still a good amount of space there. So there's potential that it could really come back to this concept of a waterfront marine center development and refocus and be able to meet multiple needs. We will start scrolling through and you'll see that when we get to it. The other recommendation was to remove the public art installation at Central Park Ice and Main Street project. This was a collaboration project with Seldovia Arts Council. I did bring it up to them. They were going to talk about it again at their next meeting, but it seems like they also have some other focuses and priorities to attend to first. So again, not to lose track of it, put it back under future considerations. And then if it comes back up in conversation with the Arts Council, and that's something that they'd like to focus on and prioritize, we can do that in collaboration with them. And then lastly, you'll see under this considerations recommended by administration is that removing the phase 2 of fuel retail and distribution facilities so that we can further develop that plan with the tenant. Once the roof project's done, I know they have some development ideas they want to do inside of the building itself, and then being able to readjust from there. So just taking a little pause back. Any thoughts on these immediately before we jump into the meat of the plan?
Go ahead and chime in if anyone's got any initial thoughts on anything.
Could you repeat about the Block Street holding off on that? You were saying that they were going to do some research and give us information, but did you also say that would be some funding also? Or did I misunderstand?
Two different projects happening in that area, or actually two different areas regarding Block Street.
Mhm.
So one is that there is a sewer project that's been listed for a long time in our plans that needs to happen. And it's actually more Spillum.
Mhm.
No, it's more Block.
It's Block.
It's more Block, sorry. Thinking about the map in my head. It's more, there is funding for that in a village safe water and sewer overview planning project that we received, a planning grant that's started. So they're going to come down this month in 2 weeks and they'll start that project. They're going to review, we have 9 high priority areas. They're going to review those, any other areas that come up at the time, and then write a preliminary engineering report for each area so that we can start looking at cost estimates, prioritization, and moving forward with actually completing some of those projects. So that's one. It is in the works from the planning side, and that's why I caution maybe holding off a little bit on putting it forward as a legislative priority at least, because you'll have better data for it within a year if everything goes the way it's supposed to. The second Block Street, which is more, this one's the Spillum, is that there is an undeveloped neighborhood behind the city yard there, kind of across the street from you on the left, like across from Chunk by Roberta's, that has come up in question a couple of times recently, very recently at a planning commission meeting about how to develop that and what that looks like for those property owners. And it's been included in the plan to look at or do a planning project for access in that area, as well as water and sewer, as well as water and sewer for the Frank Raby parcels on the east side of town that don't have water and sewer at this time. So in thinking through the water and sewer planning overview plan, the housing needs assessment that potentially could go into this plan. And we're working on a safe streets transportation plan right now with Alaska Municipal League. It might be prudent to focus on those projects first, even though, we don't want to plan. And have some more concrete data on what the housing needs are, what those costs are to do some of those projects, and being able to then have informed discussions to make those decisions on where to spend our efforts and energies moving forward and what to prioritize first is what I'm suggesting.
Okay, thank you.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So on this memo here, you'll also see some new projects, but I think in the effort of time, we'll go through the plan real quickly and then we can go back to those new projects and introduce them and see what it is what you're interested in including or not. But I'm just going to do a quick scroll through here. Unless you guys want to go through this in another way, let me know. And we'll get into the meat of the plan itself. So here's the draft.
Okay.
We're just gonna kind of flip through here where I'm on page 7 again, table of contents. And then going to go into our high priority projects. So you'll see that's again, Block Street, skid steer, small boat harbor float improvements, municipal dock improvements, and backhoe. So that starts on page, it says 8, but that is not right because we're in the full packet. Sorry about that.
Heidi, when you mentioned backhoe, are you talking about a rubber tire vehicle or a track vehicle?
Rubber tire. Yep, so this commitment to partnerships moved up to the front. And then we'll have a space saver for the resolution for FY27 with the designated legislative priorities and hopefully adopting the CIP. Then we'll have our high priority projects. You can see those project descriptions here. So Block Street, as mentioned, it does have that project cost from a couple of years ago. That's that 1.3 million. And talks about some of the history there on Block Street. It's got, it was included. Yeah, yep. So that's the 2024 cost there from CRW. Then the skid steer. And that projected cost comes with the attachments recommended. So that's the brush hog and forklifts, forks for that. Small boat harbor float improvements. Remember, that's a planning project because we did a planning project in 2000. I want to say 8, but I think I'm mixing that up with Jack Bluff. I'll have to double check. It actually might say in here 2011. And they did do some of those recommended improvements, but there you can see there's a big list of other improvements that still need to be done. And the municipal dock. And those improvements have narrowed down. We've been kind of working away at them slowly, piece by piece. We did receive a quote to replace 4 of the ladders. 4 of them are still in all right condition. 4 of them really need to be replaced. And a couple of the platforms that connect to the ladders or that are on the dock itself. And that was about 14,000. Of course, we know that that will go up over time. So having a total project cost of 25,000 there to do some of that work. And then here's the backhoe replacement. And that's new dollars. The F 199,737. That's for a new machine through NC Machinery with the government contract. similar to how we leased the grader. And let's see here. So that considerations includes a desire for a 420 Caterpillar with boom suspension and power shift. Requirements include 4x4 front bucket with a hydraulic coupler, Balderson pin style preferred for current attachments, an extendable stick and rear wheel spacers for chain utilization that does not hit the body. Just kind of a good placeholder. These sheets are good placeholders. That way, as we do move forward with any of the projects, we have that background and history. Anything on the high priority to start? No? Okay, these are our mid-range projects. Heavy equipment complex with archival storage, multi-purpose building improvements projects. That is redoing these back stairs, doing some of the plumbing in Seldovia space, some of the exterior or interior work and bathrooms in this space, more of a facelift update. Again, some of those things we might be able to just do internally, piece by piece. And then, so you'll see that project there. The historic boardwalk repair and improvement. We did have a cost estimate for about 225,000, but that didn't include any engineering. And I have a feeling with seeing some of the other project costs that would actually go up significantly when we start looking at different types of funding for it. Just because of all of the federal requirements and state requirements for it. So it's probably a pretty low cost estimate. But I get a nice overview. And this last page here on the boardwalk is actually notes from the 2014 comprehensive plan. Not wanting to lose that history, it did a really great overview about the wooden boardwalk being built in the community in 1931, the importance of that boardwalk, the tragedy of 1964, some of the background, the urban renewal that happened after that, and the impact it had on the community. I'm just trying to keep that data in the plan itself. Vacuum truck is another mid-range plan with a jetter. I did put in a call for a quote, and I'm waiting to hear back from an individual about that, just so we can start having a general idea of what that will cost. Our existing vac truck and jetter both are from 1982, and anytime we go to use them, they require quite a bit of work just to get them rolling and going. So that's definitely something that we probably need to replace in the near future in order to continue to take care of our services or our utilities. Cybersecurity improvements. You guys already approved 17,000 for physical security measures. We did apply for a grant for 15,000. We haven't heard back on that for more of the policy side of those improvements, but those things continue to move along. And then collaborative economic strategy plan has been in the CIP for a couple of years here. This page expands it a little bit more, not a whole lot of detail because there hasn't been a lot of progress. This is in the 2014 comprehensive plan and in the new comprehensive plan, the draft. All of these projects do tie into the comprehensive plan. Some relate directly back. This is one of them that is an action item in the comprehensive plan itself, is to complete a collaborative economic strategy plan. So that is something that at some point we should start making progress on. Boat haul out service repairs and improvements. Again, we've done some things internally and we continue to look at switching out some of these blocks. We just need to set some time for that. And the council actually appropriated $5,000 in the FY26 budget to do some electrical repairs in the boatyard. So we'll be looking at that this spring. So that's their mid-range. Looking at long range, you'll see this first project is the value added building. It's left in here as its existing form from the 2025-2030 plan. Then we'll follow with Lake Susan, public access improvements, the Seldovia Wilderness RV Park, an outside beach campground redevelopment, harbor waterfront boardwalk, alternative pedestrian transportation pathway, and water and sewer utility system mapping. It's kind of hard because these projects have been in here a while, but they are long range projects. So we have to remember that. And now that we don't see the ones that we're making as much progress in, it's like these are the projects that we need to make progress in, right? So it can be a little disheartening, but I just have to remember the big list that we already are accomplishing. So this is the plan the description from the plan last year, and it did talk about updating that plan into a multifunctional hub. So starting to work that direction towards that 2007 plan, but not quite fully capturing it. I definitely think we should pause here in a couple of minutes and look at that a little bit more, and also looking at it against the new plan. Like Susan, you'll see not a lot of changes to that one, or Seldovia Wilderness RV Park, or Harbor Waterfront Boardwalk. We're starting to fill in some numbers for each of these. Water and sewer utility system mapping was updated to include additional considerations for asset management system database and expanding utility mapping to include additional city assets, including facilities and roads. And that is something that we've been in discussion with Alaska Municipal League, and there could be an opportunity for that here in the near future. So that would be exciting. And then we have our collaborative projects. And as I mentioned, removing that Central Park art installation, but still keeping Seldovia Volunteer Fire and EMS emergency radio upgrade, increased digital equity through access to broadband, ADA improvements, and pedestrian pathway sidewalk expansion project, which I know is near and dear to many of your hearts. And then the alternative pedestrian bicycle pathway for Jackaloff Bay Road. So you'll see them in here. We did apply for funding for the emergency radio upgrade project, and it was supposed to be announced last summer. It's still on hold. We're really hoping that that happens. There have been some other improvements to the repeater and things, as you remember. So we do continue to work on that. Digital equity is definitely one that needs to be done in partnership with our local organizations. And then those DOT type projects. And these are also included, as I said, in the comprehensive plan, draft comprehensive plan. So then we have our future considerations. Anything that gets removed will be put in here. I did highlight a few because they are ones that we've been working on, or that are going to be discussed here in a few minutes as potential new projects, but potentially ones that could have some movement forward in the plan itself. And I'll pause right there for anything about the immediate plan and what's in there before we talk about putting more things in and taking things out.
Go ahead and just chime in if anyone's got anything.
So on the Seldovia Fire and EMS radios, you're waiting on a grant and it's not gonna happen until 2027.
I'm not sure. Yeah, so they're supposed to announce it this winter. Like they were supposed to announce it over the summer and they didn't. It's still on hold. Jan checks the website pretty regularly. If not, we'll apply for other funding sources. The departments also talked about, maybe buying some individual radios. They've done some other work, like I said, recently to update the repeater itself. And are certainly looking into what that communication style is going to be like moving forward in the department. But it's a collaborative project because it's not just the city. It's the department's part of the city, but they are kind of their own entity as well. So showing that support for them as they move forward with their communication devices, helping however we can, whether that's writing grants or putting a few dollars forward, or just trying to make sure that they can provide a great service.
I do have a question on the sidewalks there. I know we have a very
Uh-huh.
limited amount of sidewalk, and I would definitely like to see some sort of progress on that. I'm not sure if, if that's as simple as us reaching out to DOT and, if we, I don't know if DOT is going to be, funding any of that, or if we're expecting to get any money from them, or if we're just looking for a blessing for us to, replace some of those sidewalks in kind. The section particularly I'm, most concerned about is, runs along Main Street, from basically from the Linwood, in front of my fence all the way over, then connects over, to the dirt in front of the boardwalk, but only because that is so degraded in there. It's literally a hazard, mainly where that the collector, that section where the collector is at for the water is in really rough shape. It's just degraded over the years. So, and I'd like to, like to see us make some progress on at least getting some of that, the sidewalk, if we can, straighten it up and replaced sooner rather than later. If we wait for DOT, we might be waiting a long, long time.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that this is something that Councilmember Barber has brought up as well. And he's been in discussion with Representative Vance and trying to get her over here so we can talk about some of those collaborative projects with DOT. I have talked to our area planner about it a few times. There's potential that they will open up their community transportation program and their alternative transportation program. They do that about every 3 years from DOT. And then that's a great place to get projects listed and get, to work with DOT and get funding to help them come into the community and complete those, as well as ensuring that in the next step, we get these projects listed, so that they are state projects. But I hear you about wanting to do more on our front. We are trying right now to get them to agree to let us repair and replace those storm drains. The one in front of the pavilion and the one in front of the liquor store. And those are both state, we believe they're both state stormwater drains. But we do have funding to replace one and then funding for the planning of the other. And that's something that we have requested that they let us do. That could be a really good kind of door in to starting to take care of some of these things potentially. If we can work together on them and get those projects completed. So absolutely, we want to continue working on this, and thank you for bringing that up as a priority to do more internally if we need to, because we can take that and hopefully run with it.
Yeah, and even if we just get, some discussion started with them and, maybe there is a longer term solution. But again, I mean, I think some of these smaller sections, even if we have to have hire a small contractor, concrete contractor to come over, or, someone in town, I don't think it would be horribly expensive, especially if maybe we do the demo or something,
Mhm.
uh, in town. So yeah, we can talk about it more. I just want to see. I'd like to see some conversation at least get rolling in that direction. So they've been degraded as long as I've been here. You know, that was going on 13 years. So it's time. We got to start making some improvements on some of that Main Street stuff. Anyone else, anything coming to mind or any projects you want to comment on or?
I agree with the mayor that the sidewalks are pretty shatty and could use some improvement. I suggest making it a priority rather than just tabling it for discussion. And maybe look into seeing what the prices are for something like that to at least get started and see, you know, if we have to use our funds. I don't foresee, you know, getting a grant for everything. It'd be really nice, though.
Okay, so if there isn't anything else on that, then we can go move on to projects for consideration of removal and inclusion under future considerations. So again, not losing them. And I've mentioned these. So this is the Spillum Malcolm. So just talking about removing it as a priority level, putting it for future consideration. Spillum and Malcolm water and main extensions. The first one was access. This is water main extension, then sewer main extension, and then Frank Raby water main extension and Frank Raby sewer main extension. Is the council okay with that, or do you want to hold these in the plan still under a priority range?
Personally, I'll just chime in, and then if anyone wants to follow, agree or disagree. Personally, I'm fine if all these are going to be wrapped up in some sort of planning projects here that are upcoming, and we're going to get more information on them. I think it makes sense to maybe not have them on there as a priority, and then set them aside until we have more information. You know, here within the next 12 months or 6 to 12 months, and then look at them, you know, after we've got the full story, if they're maybe going to be included as part of one of those other larger projects, or, you know, I think it's going to get parsed out a little bit here, like you were saying, if I'm understanding all that correctly.
I'm in agreement with the mayor. I think we need to get as much information as we can before we move forward. We'll just put it on to future projects.
Yeah, if I
Yep.
can, chime in, I'm also in agreement with Amon and Mayor Campbell on this as well.
Okay. Thank you, council. If there's anything else on those, I will keep going through. And the new projects for consideration. So this, if you are on your table of contents, it's the page before the table of contents. Sorry, not to drag you away. In the memo, there's a list of those proposed projects, and I did a little chart next to it. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but if you want to mark down yes or no for including it and what priority level, or if it's a future consideration, that might be helpful for discussion, maybe not. I just was trying, because it's 10 projects being presented here. And obviously they don't all need to go in there, but they are things that have come up either through various plans, through the comprehensive plan discussions, through discussions with staff, discussions with council, discussions with our collaborative partners like NOAA and KB NER. So they do have support. You'll see in that table, there's support for each plan or for each project. as well as being in the comprehensive plan, draft comprehensive plan. So the first one is that waterfront marine center development. And this is the one, if you want to go back and forth between, I think it was page 29 and this one, you'll see the previous version of the value added building, and this would replace that. If that's something that the council desires, going back to that 2007 draft concept for the area. And the project description talks about that 2007 plan and really being able to have a cultural gathering and arts and crafts and retails and marine related industrial space, with fish processing and shipping, a central arts cultural facility. Oh, I already said that. And a venue for events and performances. So we did have some updates since that plan. As I mentioned, the value added building has been built and 2 of the lots were leased, so they're no longer part of the plan. It makes the area a little bit smaller. But here we talk a little bit about the history of the community change grant that we applied for with Seldovia Chamber of Commerce that really did focus more on this type of concept without even looking at that plan. And then this is just a nice picture. One of, I think there was like 7 different ones. One of the concepts that was in the plan for that space. And you'll see it shows a fish processing building with cold storage and ice, and then a multi-purpose building and retail shop space and all this lovely parking. So this is just one of the concepts that came with the plan. It seems similar to what we kind of have now with the value added building, though of course it's a little bit of a different size and area of on that lot. Not a lot, just a little bit. Still something that can be pursued. And let me see. Oh, why won't let me scroll up here? Of course, that boat maintenance and fish meal shop on this plan is where the CISPRI is. So that space is no longer there. So looking overall at this project to revamp that 2007 kind of concept and recent concepts about using that space in a multi-use fashion, and completing a new planning project that would help us move forward in using that lot to its best potential. Thoughts on updating the project to just be a little bit more concise with that idea of a multi-use lot as seen in 2007 and recent?
Yeah, I kind of said this is a great find. This is a great thing. I would suggest that the retail space being directly across from the fish processing might not work out so well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the whole thing will have to be reconfigured. Because there have been changes, and it is on page 64 of your packet. You can see that draft conceptual plan and it's in its entirety. So it is in your packet. I won't go through all of it, but just what that starting work was for this space.
Yeah.
And then maybe going a little bit back to that, as we've seen over the last couple of years, the use of that lot expand into more of this type of multi-use space.
Heidi, this one might be, I mean, I know not everybody's chiming in on this, but this one's a little more controversial for me. I'm not a super, there's going to be pros and cons to this type of idea, multi-purpose space, multicultural, all kinds of different things. I mean, I like that idea. At the same time, I think it would really have to have some thought and some long-term strategy here to take that, those lots and, would basically, if you tied those up, then if somebody, and again, I don't want to wait for another 20 years or that building's going to be falling down, but on the multi-purpose building there, at some point, if somebody wanted to do something and a proposal came forward, I'm sure the lots adjacent to it would be a main part of whatever business might go there. Again, I'm not opposed to this, but I'm not a super big fan. Just wanting to limit what someone might do. It's kind of a catch-22, right? Because we've been waiting for 10, 12 years, however, 13, 15 years, whatever it's been. And it could be another 15 years. And at some point, yeah, do we got to cut our losses and move forward in a different direction? I don't know. We just started talking about that, here recently about, taking that building and entertaining doing something different with it, chopping it up into smaller spaces. Obviously there has not been a lot of interest because we haven't really received, to my knowledge, any additional proposals on it. But yeah, so I'm split on it for sure, and I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but yeah, definitely puts us in a little bit of quandary there with those lots are valuable lots. But they're only valuable if they're, if someone's using them to do something to either make money or to, better the community and all the residents, in the community.
I'll chime in on this because I know I've had my feet dipped into this concept as it's grown. And I think you bring up a great point, Mayor Campbell, and I know that point has been brought up by some to myself as a concern as well when we've talked about doing more in there on like the recreational end. But I think you said it perfectly just now as far as that balance of it's better to be used. And I think we can, if we keep it really open still to where whatever is going in there, if it's not an industry, somehow keeping it that we're able to go back if there is an interest at some point, because that's been my kind of vision and my way of approaching it with what I've done down there with the ice rink, with Arts Council, using that as an event space, is really being open with my council hat of saying, hey, like there's all this energy and stuff that we're doing to better that, and it looks way better than when I moved here 4 years ago, just by people using it and keep it cleaning up, and every year it's getting more life. But I've been just saying, hey, this is something that ideally we want an industry to come in. It hasn't happened, but until that happens, and I think that the only way to get something in there is to be starting to utilize it for these other things that we can slowly bring in more infrastructure that makes it so somebody wants to be in there, or being able to then look at grants or funds and ways to build up things like the utilities in that building. Because as we've talked about too, the building itself is there, but a big reason no one wants to go in is the cost. I mean, I'm going to be, knock on wood, hopefully opening a fish processing facility across from the harbor, one that makes more sense to be across from the harbor this year, but also the cost is way less. It would be amazing to like have a building like that, but to run a business over here costs so much, and to have to look at the overhead of just even getting into that building, even if it is a larger industry for it, would be so much right now. So there's a way that I like where Heidi's going with this, but we can still keep that kind of open in people's minds, that it's not a set in stone. It doesn't have to turn into a recreational park forever with all the frilly things happening there. It's still an industrial space, and if the right thing comes across, that we would utilize it for that. That's my thought.
I'm in agreement with Ashley. I think it needs to be developed to some extent so that it is a usable space for someone to potentially come over and do something with it. I think that would actually, that would probably bring the revenue in a lot faster than just waiting around to see if someone wants to completely come in and do a whole full build on the area. I mean, it doesn't have to, obviously, like Heidi said, follow this plan exactly, but I do think that developing to some extent will probably help it become more attractive to someone who wants to do something with it.
I have maybe a
Increment.
suggestion. It's not a bad plan. I see some things on this plan that would be very beneficial and make money. The ice machine, I think, would be a great asset on the Catchmack with the fishermen. I feel like the fish processing, maybe not so much, but the cold storage, I'm thinking maybe take baby steps. Get the building finished, get a cement floor, get the ice machine part of the building in there, and have that start making some revenue. And, maybe not try to do the whole plan at one time. We have one building up already. It just needs to be finished. And then get something in there that will bring some revenue in. And then maybe, go from there. The next building, if that's what, the council decides. But retail shops, I think the retail shops are a good idea because the shops that we have on Main Street now are occupied or closed or not opening or just using it for summer rental. But I don't think it's a bad concept. I think boat maintenance might be not utilized as much as you would think, but I think it's a good with the first building that's already up. I suggest finishing the floor, walls, get an ice machine in there. I did hear from a fisherman this summer that they ran out of ice. They had to get it from Kodiak. And so, I think that that would be a good first step. That's my opinion.
So I think what I'm hearing is that, yeah, there's some interest in this concept for the, some sort of development. Yeah, it's, obviously broad in our thoughts and it's, kind of initial right now, but yeah, I mean, I think we could probably, include this and then, obviously much more conversation to come in the future here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would envision this as a planning project or even just a conceptual project planning project to start. Because like you said, it is very broad and there are it's a big space with a lot of potential. So yeah, we can include this and I made notes about doing a phased approach. And I can include something in this description about that as well, and looking at finishing the existing infrastructure and then looking at further development of that lot as needed. Is that fair?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. And I'm assuming this is gonna still be a long range project.
Correct.
Okay. Then we have a couple of new projects related to stormwater as we make improvements on some of our other stormwater infrastructure. We had 5 priority projects listed in our stormwater management plan. We're making progress on three. Vista, Frank Raby, and Main Street. So these are the other two, wanting to make sure that we don't lose track of them. That's stormwater improvements for Catchmack Drive. And this includes, because it's such a narrow area, paving it and then putting a stormwater drain down the middle and with culverts out into the slough. And that's their suggestion in the plan. Not saying we have to do that, but that was their suggestion in the plan. But certainly it needs some attention one way or the other. And then the last priority was a citywide sediment basin study. So looking at putting those two in the plan as new projects, so that we can continue to make progress on stormwater management. Thoughts on those? Priority level? Should they be in the plan?
Yeah, I think they need to be in there. We've had a number of conversations last year on Catchmack Street. I mean, that obviously has to have some sort of attention before we start getting some problems in the city office there with residents that live along that street. And then obviously we know just runoff in general. All of the stormwater we've got to get dealt with. Clearly, if we don't, we're gonna, have DC or EPA coming down our throats here in the future. So, yeah, we've already started, and we just need to keep that process going. And this needs to be included on there, in my opinion, somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. They should be included.
I have a silly question. Okay. Catchamack Drive. That's on the slough, correct?
Yes.
Why am I thinking years ago that was not a road? It was considered is it an hour road? A street? Because, am I wrong? Wasn't that considered it was not considered a legal road.
I have,
I'm
yeah,
trying to think. It was about 6, 7 years ago. There was an issue about this street.
I think you might be referring to the Cedar Street extension, and that's still not a street. And that's
Okay.
the one that's just past Willow Street, from Willow to Lake, more on the Susan Lake side, Lake Susan side. Um, of that area that's not a platted row.
Okay, this is a
There have been issues, and I've seen in the minutes and in the recordings with Catchmack in the past. It is a platted row.
it's a platted road.
It's narrow, which is part of the problem. So,
Maybe that's what it
Are we
was. I'm sorry. I
talking
just
this extension of Cedar Street past my house
yeah, that's not a platted row, right?
to Willow Street is?
It is, yeah,
Yeah, but beyond that to Shoreline Drive.
yeah.
okay. That's what it was. I'm
So-
confused with streets.
But we're talking Catchmack.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I'm gonna one up your silly question. Is it possible to make that a one-way? I mean, I'm sure this has probably been discussed before and there's probably a definite backlash to that comment, but I mean, seriously.
Through the mayor, that's something that could be brought up if that's something you want again. I think it has been discussed before. Certainly can bring it up again if you want. Just thinking about how you're directing traffic through that slough area.
Well, did you say they were paving it?
Well, that's what that's what the engineers recommended. That doesn't mean that has to be the solution, but they recommended because of how narrow it is to pave it and put in grates, put in a drainage system and grading in the middle because it's so narrow, it'd be hard to ditch on either side and then have that hook up into a drainage system. So they were looking at ways to try to put drainage in with it where it's at.
Mm.
Jack, did you have something?
What, I'm not sure, Shoreline Drive is from the bridge all the way around, is that correct?
Shoreline Drive goes from the bridge to that kind of corner where the city property is in front of Lake Susan.
It,
And then Catchmack goes from that. It's actually called Lake Street with the ramp that goes down into the water. And that area, do you know what I'm talking about? The next to the Nordstrom's, that ramp that goes into the water there.
on Lake Susan?
Yeah,
Or-
by it, no, on the slough side. Sorry, we have a map here.
Right down from,
Yeah, it's right next to the new red house there that goes
Yeah.
down into the slough, then up around the corner.
That's Lake Street.
Yep.
And if you, so. And then from Lake Street up to the bridge
Okay,
is Catchment.
Here's Shoreline.
No,
Drive.
this is Catchment.
Okay, that's why I'm confused, because here's Cedar Street or Willow Street.
Yeah.
Okay, so this continuation of Cedar Street doesn't really exist on the plat,
Right, and we're not discussing
but everybody uses that.
They do, I believe the property owners have, access easements for each other. And so it is an access point for the property owners.
Todd's here and Randy and
Mhm.
and Sonny's dad,
Yeah,
so how do they, I mean,
that's a discussion that's happening with the property owners and the planning commission right now. But we're talking about drainage on Catchmack Street.
yes.
Yeah. This one
I
is,
thought this was short.
no, that's Catchmack, this is Shoreline.
I call
Fair enough.
so we're not widening this road, we're just gonna,
I
Paved.
don't think we can because of the way it's platted. So, and that's just at the beginning of it. This is, getting it in the plan and then we can have discussions and we can look at grants
Yeah.
for planning and engineering and moving forward. So it's nothing set in stone, but it is identifying it so we can start moving forward.
make it a priority or a
Yeah,
mid-priority,
a mid-range.
mid-range.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Does that work for everybody?
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Sounds good.
I'm good.
All right, we'll go on to the next one unless there's any more questions on stormwater. And this is the harbor roof improvements. Or harbor office improvements, starting with roof. This one is in here. You guys did put 5,000 in for siding in FY 26. That building surprisingly is nearing the end of its 60-year lifespan, so it does need a little love. It's had some love over the years, but you can see through the siding on the sides. The roof blew off, a quarter of it blew off over a decade ago and has had some repair, but it's just getting, in worse shape as things kind of wear. And even those improvements made in 2006, there was some thermal improvements, have a 20-year lifespan according to our most recent audit. So I did a nice asset management plan and it's just continuing to grow, but it's a slow process. And one of the fun things about doing the asset management plan with all of our facilities and all of our vehicles and roads and stormwater, you still need to work more on the utilities side of the water and sewer. But it was that I could highlight where where things were getting to the end of their useful life or where they had passed it or were coming close. And it was pretty on par with everything that's already been identified in the plan. Even this harbor roof is set to be at the end of its useful life in the next 5 years. Even it has been identified as a future consideration for a few years now. So putting this forward as potential project to move actually into the plan this year, especially knowing that some funding has already been appropriated for siting. And then we can just keep working away at it if that's something that the council wants to see. Otherwise, it will continue to live as a future consideration.
I'm in favor of adding this into the plan. We have been talking about this. It's not a huge building. I don't think it's going to be, I mean, there's going to be multiple phases to it, but obviously if we start having leaks, it's an important building. It's important to be able to manage our harbor. And if it started, ending up like Swiss cheese in there and, raining inside, that's going to be a definite problem. So some point we need to get that. It's a shingle roof. I think it's a shingle roof right now, right? Yep. We just said. It's not going to be horribly expensive to replace that on that small of a building. And as long as we got it weather tight, then we can work on siding and, all the other improvements. But I think we should get it in the plan now and start planning rather than kicking it down the road.
I agree, and I think it should be a higher priority.
High priority.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree
so.
too. And I think going off of what Jackie mentioned earlier, that we love getting grants for things, but if there's things that we can find internal funds for to get them started, this might be one of those projects because our harbor fund has been one of our healthier funds, and this would be part of that. And so as we're looking to get it done and try to just check it off, that might be something in the budget process to look at.
I'm in agreement with the mayor, Jackie, and Ashley. And honestly, the longer you let this stuff go, it's just gonna get more expensive. So I think we need to address it. It's an important building.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Amon. And that's exactly what I was going to say but we know now by experience what happens when when you keep deferring maintenance, indefinitely, it comes back to bite you sooner or later. So better to plan, get out ahead of it, and let's start dealing with it.
Okay, thank you. If that works, we will include that in and then move to the next project. This one is kind of a little bit of a thrown together project and speaking with Public Works about some of their priority needs. Really all relating back to sewer and taking care of our lift station and the fact that we need a new vac truck and that we have several outhouses or porta potties in the community that we're responsible for taking care of. This was a wish list item for them to have bigger holding tanks at the airport and Jacklaw. And I did include under future considerations that, but these projects could split out and become their own projects or be incorporated with other projects that update those facilities. For instance, when we talk about doing the RV park and outside beach updates, or talk about Jackloff updates, hopefully here in the future. And as we talk about working with the state for potentially, it's a future consideration and it's in the comp plan to have water and sewer at the airport. Maybe that plan, maybe this. So it's a very, I guess it's a very infant stage of this project or this planning process of just saying, hey, we identify that our holding facilities at Jackloff and Airport are not adequate anymore, and that they are taking, more frequent staff time, and we need better equipment and just all of the varying pieces to upkeep those holding tanks that are only 75 gallons, which means every month and a half, we're pumping them in the summer because they get used. And then also, this was another one that came about with our asset management program. in terms of facilities, like the harbor, the other one that was not on my mind or on my radar at the time was the outhouse facilities at the outside beach. And I had staff tell me before Public Works that there was some infiltration happening there. So then to see it come back as a red flag of like, oh, this really is way overdue for some updates. And then talk to them a little bit further. It was like, this was something that we probably should have identified a while ago as a need to update that holding facility at the outside beach. So, just saying as a initial project, looking at or planning for expanding these facilities or improving these facilities with the thought process that they could, you know, they could separate and become part of bigger projects and different avenues, but at least getting them into the plan and identified that we need to update these facilities.
I think we definitely need to get this in the plan. I could definitely see this getting broke out into multiple. Obviously, we've got a vac truck, we've got the porta potties that have been deplorable and beyond atrociousness and have led to a horrible visitor experience for a number of folks that have come to either jackal off or flown at the airport to, only to go and have to use the restroom to find it previously topped off to the point of no return. So yeah, we were in this situation a couple of years ago. That's been temporarily rectified because we all agreed we cannot let them get to that point. But yeah, we've got some issues we got to deal with. And then, yeah, I mean, water and sewer or sewer at the airport, that's obviously a little more, involved project, certainly worth discussing. But yeah, I think this should be on there, whether it's, long range, whatever we want to do. But I think we should definitely get it on there and start some discussion because there's some stuff in here, definitely with the porta potties and the vac truck that need to come into play.
I agree with
I,
Mr. Mayor.
I'm gonna third that. That's top priority. Our porta potties should be accessible and just open to the public without it being a concern, a hazard.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, I think this needs to be taken care of soon. I mean, we can't, I mean, for our own locals, for our own children, for the sake of our poor tourists, we need to make this better.
Okay, so I'm hearing we'll put that in there maybe as a long range plan for right now as they kind of find their way with other plans and other projects potentially, or if there's funding or opportunity to do things in the short term, we can work on it as we do some long-term planning. And then we'll move to the next one. This one was one that we actually had assistance in writing this project, this proposal, and you may remember having seen this earlier in the year when we were talking about a NOAA restoring fish passage through barrier removal grant that was applied for by SVT in partnership with the city to look at removing that Fish Creek Dam if it makes sense, if there's another secondary water source or we no longer need a secondary water source. And so that we're not having to maintain and take care of this infrastructure, as well as allowing it to return back to its natural state, or that area return back to its natural state, and enhancing critical salmon habitat. We also applied today, actually just today at close, there's a statement of interest for another opportunity similar to this NOAA project or NOAA program for this project through the Denali Commission. So that was something, again, our partner with NOAA Kasittna Bay Laboratory helped us just write up a couple page. It was really, really short statement of interest. And then if it's selected, it can go in for a longer application process. We do have support for this project from KB Nerd, Trout Unlimited. Ooh, there were several others that are not coming to my mind at this time of day. Of course, Seldovia Village Tribe and the city so far. So the council, with the council's blessing with the previous projects submittal. So with that, knowing that there is some work happening towards this project overall, and it is a city asset, city land, just identifying it and putting it in the plan is probably could be a long range priority. I don't know, that I don't know. You guys will have to tell me where it's at in the priority level, or if it should be in the plan, or or maybe it stays a future consideration. But it could be in there as a long range if that's something you guys want to have as a placeholder and identifying that it is something we're working towards. ADF and G, they were the other one supportive of this measure. Very
It
supportive.
seems to make sense that we should include it in the plan as a long-range plan, especially since there is some active work going on. Yeah, it'd be a little weird if we, start getting some traction on this and it wasn't even in our plan. So, yeah, and we know some of these are, they're long-term, especially this one. It's lined out here through FY28, assuming we could get some funding. Yeah, it'd be a good deal. More fish is better for everyone. So, and getting all that cleaned up. There's no sense now at this date and time to still have that, that old, antiquated, infrastructure still installed. It's not doing anything. So, yeah, I'm in favor of putting it in there, but leaving it as a long term.
I have a question. As it exists right now, if we don't remove it, is there any liability to the city of Seldovia if we leave it as it is?
So it is a city infrastructure, a city asset. We don't have to do any periodic safety inspections or anything on it because it's a smaller piece of infrastructure. But certainly if it needs maintenance or improvements on it in the future, it gets older, that is the city's responsibility to take care of it.
And as it's not damming back water at this point. It's just a flow through at this point. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, there's a long-standing history where the city had it closed for almost a decade, and there was a lot of back and forth between Seldovia Village Tribe is pretty outspoken and advocated for the city to open it. ADF and G got involved. There's a huge file on it. And I believe it was 2002, early 2000s, the city finally opened it back up and is supposed to keep it open unless we receive a permit to close it for some type of project. Even then, still there are periods of the year where we can't close it. I think that was like May through November. I can't remember the exact dates. I'd have to look at it. Where we're not supposed to close it. And the pipe water back up to the water treatment plant has been removed. The last 20 feet or so was actually taken out of the ground. And there's it's not hooked up to that pump house
So it's
anymore.
not an alternative water source at this point.
At this point, it's not. It would require some temporary pumps placed in and line ran up or reconnected to the old line. And found it would require work to be able to use it. At this point, it's not functional.
long term.
Long term. Okay. Okay, another one we were working on, and would be beneficial is that watershed and wetlands assessment. This is also with our partners with KB NER, NOAA, and some of the other local partners in the area, to do a hydrology study and show what we actually have for a watershed in Seldovia, where those recharge and discharge areas are, as well as the doing a quality assessment of our existing wetlands, and then being able to plan for appropriate development or not of those wetlands. What needs to be held, what can be developed, what's critical, just an overall look at water in Seldovia from our drinking water all the way down to the slough and the ocean. And we did apply for a 2025 NIFWIF with KB NER, and that was for $701,000 this last year, and hoping that comes through. We're excited to get some more data about the water in the area. They did something similar in Homer, and me and our public works operator, Amanda Miller, got a chance to go over and be a part of the presentation on their watershed assessment, with their big map of discharge and recharge areas for the watershed and the work that they're doing at their reservoir. It was pretty phenomenal. And it was definitely one where Amanda leaned over to me partway through and was like, we need this. We need this. So I was like, okay, let's start this conversation. So it grew out of that. It's still very new. It's kind of exciting to work with them, and I hope that the council is still supportive of this. But definitely looking at the value of being able to appropriately manage our watershed and our wetlands, that the city is the primary property owner of within the community.
Yeah, Heidi, this is another one. I think for long-term planning, if there's going to be any kind of additional development around, I think something like this is critical. I know had a big wrestling match in Girdwood with all the proposed expansion that they've got going there. I don't think they've fully done a watershed and wetlands assessment for that entire new project that they're talking like 1,500 homes or something. You see up in the valley, all of these new subdivisions going in and the massive amount of runoff that is impacting all of the existing, or a number of existing properties that have been there for years and years and never had a single problem until these new subdivisions were put in. I highly doubt they did much of of a watershed or wetlands, any kind of serious assessment to the impacts of what would happen, for future development. So, and that may not encompass everything in that, in that assessment. I don't know what the outcome of the entire assessment would be, but I suspect there would be some pretty good baseline information in something like this. So I'm definitely in support for a long-term discussion and planning.
I'm with Mayor Campbell. If we're gonna be developing, we need to know. We need to know what's going on with our wetlands. So long term.
Okay, thank you. If there's anything else on that one, we will move down to Safe Streets and Roads for All Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. This is something that we signed on as part of a bundle. 15 communities through AML are working on their Safe Streets for All plan, which we're hoping will help us with our long-range transportation plan, and helping with our conversations with DOT, and just really giving us an overall comprehensive plan for what improvements we need in this community regarding safety. And we this would be committing $9,300 as a match. But overall to have our own individual safety plan. If you remember, we did we were part of the Safe Streets for All plan with the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Very impressive plan. We were really thankful to be a part of it. But it was very broad because the Kenai Peninsula Borough is huge. And they were very kind. They tried to make sure that they included a project from each community in the plan. So Jackloff Bay Road did end up in the plan. Even though there was a lot more pressing, they had 20 priorities that they included. And Jackloff was one of them, which was fantastic. But overall in that discussion, there seemed to kind of be a sense of not really capturing what Seldovia needs because we are so small. And so this is a great way for the community at a small price to be able to, and that 9,300 can be in kind. It doesn't have to be cash. It's anytime we're working on this, anything that we're putting in as staff goes towards that. This will be more of a right size plan for the community.
Yeah, this is another one. I think it makes sense. We've obviously been awarded a number of, or a grant or two under Safe Streets, with our gravel and stuff. And then obviously having a plan like this, being able to come up with our own individual safety action plan for our community specifically, will definitely help us in the future to identify things that come up when opportunities arise for funding. So this one, it could be long range, or it could be even a middle of the road one. So, but yeah, I think we definitely need to have it in there.
I think it should be a medium range plan
Okay.
in lieu of safety and the growth of the community. I think it needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I mean, we've also, one thing we know, we talked about our problems with our pedestrian safety. This kind of would bring some of this stuff to the forefront that we've been talking about with our sidewalks, how we move people, how it impacts, our roads in the summer. I mean, all of those things. And hopefully something like this would be able to capture those in writing, and then, be able to move those forward when any kind of grant opportunities arise. Where, for a major project, we'd be tuned up and ready to go.
Exactly, Mr. Mayor. This is, I should have included that really a lot of the grants right now, the transportation grants and transportation programs are looking for you to have identified those projects in a safety action plan. So this plan should help us be able to identify what those priority projects are, and even some of those like traffic calming measures, if there are, some simpler ones to some more complex ones like building boardwalks. That the hope is that this plan can capture that through communicating with the community and community residents and being here in the community, and develop that plan so that we can move some of those measures forward.
Well,
Okay.
I certainly agree with the moving forward with this, because in the summer here, you've got visitors walking down the middle of the street. And, unless you want to be rude, you can jump out of your car and say, get out of the road, but there's no sidewalks. Sidewalks would definitely need to be a priority, and some kind of signs letting our tourists or visitors know you can't walk down the middle of the road. And common sense should tell you that, but sometimes you need a sign to say it. I mean, something simple as that. Please stay off the road, stay on the side. I mean, it gets really frustrating for a lot of the locals, and and there is a big influx of visitors in here at certain times. Just now that they moved the SVT fast ferry down here, you got them coming around a blind corner. So that got really bad this year, I noticed. So I think that should be I'm thinking a medium range plan. I can't imagine it'd be real expensive to put up some signs or, get something started before next summer when the people start coming back in here, because I think somebody's going to get hurt. And I just hate to see that happen. We've had close calls already, and I think should be sooner than a long-term plan. On a smaller scale of at least get something started where you can notify people in some way that you can't walk down the middle of the road, especially on a blind corner. And I think that's just my opinion.
I am in complete agreement with Jackie. They walk right around that corner. We need to paint some lines, put some signs on the road or put some signs up. And also I'd love to see a bike lane so that those kids have a place to ride their bikes that aren't, down the middle of the street or even on the sidewalks. Because if you're gonna get people walking on the sidewalks, you're gonna have those little kids who are gonna knock them out, you know. I think a bike lane would be a great idea.
Okay, thank you. I'm capturing notes there, and have indicated for a medium range or mid-range plan. And sounds like that will be beneficial with moving forward some of the other projects and priorities of the council. So that's great. This one came out of the Planning Commission, and I think it's been talked about on the council level as well. And definitely at the infant stage of looking at what a housing needs assessment for the community would be, and trying to identify what and evaluate what our current housing availability and the condition of those is, as well as what those future housing demands may be, and then looking at prioritizing and recommending any improvements or expansion for housing in the community.
Yeah, we've talked about this one a number of times. Obviously, this should this should be in there. And once and for all, once we can get this going, I think it's probably going to be, medium or long term. I don't have the answer of how this gets paid for, but yeah, we should put it in there. This comes up numerous times a year. And yeah, just reading through the project description, I mean, it's super robust. There's all kinds of different things that it identifies. It just doesn't say, yes, we're short of housing. It talks about the types, prices, trends, itinerant housing, all the different types of housing. So yeah, it's this would be great to have a very comprehensive study on what we have and what we truly need.
Okay. If there's anything else on that one, then put it there. I'll put it in there under long, unless because it is at the very beginning stage, and as you said, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how we will pay for it or what kind of resources there are to accomplish it. But I know that it's definitely something that our planning commission chair is wanting to work on. I believe she's actually going to attend a couple of days of AML next week, and meet up with some of the other planners, and something that she's taken on as a representative of the city to look at this type of a project.
Maybe
So,
it's a HUD grant or something. I don't know if they do that
Yeah.
for small communities, but I'm sure there's some opportunities out there.
yeah. This is the last one with actual project description that has been drafted. And this is something that has started. I did not include a schedule on here, so I apologize. I will update that schedule. We are actually working on this already, again, as a collaborative project with Alaska Municipal League. And this is a coastal resilience plan. I attended a meeting in Anchorage last week. They have it built into the grant to have 2 in-person meetings, one each year. They give the community members a stipend to attend. So it was a nice $2,500 stipend to go to Anchorage, attend this meeting, talk about coastal resilience. There was representation from Cordova, Valdez, Kachemak City, the Muni of Anchorage was there, which was really cool. So because we went all the way down from Kachemak City all the way up to the Muni of Anchorage, and just had some small, more intimate types of conversations about transportation and some resilience planning within our communities. Also related to energy and housing. So again, all these things kind of circling each other. The project deliverables that are included in this program itself is a GIS data repository. So again, talking about maybe not necessarily getting down into the facilities and water and sewer, but hopefully maybe being able to build off those eventually. But having a repository that can identify stormwater drains and tsunami inundation map and any other hazards that we have, as well as a municipal road map. And that's not talking about our actual roads and streets, but again, she said, I'm picturing like a bubble chart of like how everything connects to each other in terms of resilience. And then the big piece to it is the community resilience plan. And so when I was taking notes about what that would include, again, looking at, I brought my notebook. Pull that up. In terms of resilience itself for the community, yeah, looking at that safe transportation and evacuation routes, energy resilience, emergency storage. We're talking about our heavy equipment complex, deferred infrastructure needs when it comes to stormwater, water, sewer, buildings, roads, uh, food resilience, and the emergency food cache has come up, workforce development, and economic development, with underlying, education and communication. So it could be fairly expansive. I hope that as it develops, it will, be narrowed down a little bit. But overall, when you're talking about a resilience plan, it includes a lot. And so being able to prioritize what those things are for both climate and economic resilience in the community. And then those will just further help all these other projects that we're working on, because we're saying, hey, we've identified this as a need and a priority in our resilience plan, our coastal resilience plan, and being able to use that as a resource. So I don't know that it necessarily needs to be in the plan, but I didn't want to lose track of it. There are not any dollars related to it. In fact, like I said, we receive a little stipend for attending. And there's these great deliverables that are coming out of it, but I didn't want to lose track of it. So you guys tell me if it deserves a place as a long range plan or mid-range, since we're working on it, or if it's just something that we can hold on to ourselves, outside of the plan.
Well, I think it kind of falls in hand with some of the things we have on the long term, like the wetlands, stuff like that. I I would be in support of leaving it on and maybe the mid and long range plan with the with some of the other ones that we added to the mid and long range. I think it would. I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, I second Jackie. I think it goes hand in hand with a lot of what we're already putting together. It makes sense to keep it in the long range.
Yeah, I agree with both with Jackie and Amon. I think it makes sense to have it on there, especially if it's another one that we are actively working on. It may take some time to get it all together, but I think one thing that, hopefully will come out of that when you look at a coastal resilience plan is you'll find the common denominator for all those coastal communities that are off the road system, and figure out the importance of the Alaska Marine Highway System and what it contributes to each, how much it contributes to the overall resilience of a community. So I think that could be highlighted and shared with the state at some point when that was all done. And I think you'd see that common denominator hopefully identified as one of the top contributors to either the success or downfall of the coastal communities resilience. So I'm definitely in favor of that.
Excellent point, Mr. Mayor. AMHS did come up as a priority during that discussion, as well as the Port of Alaska, when you talk about food security. So, and it was those communities because it's the central communities. They're doing it with other communities and other areas of Alaska, but this was the central coastal communities. That's why it was our group. So it was a fun group.
Yeah, and you're going to have different competing priorities depending on your geographic location and what your access is to transportation and all that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to read a number of those when their plans are completed.
Absolutely. Okay, we can put that in there as a long range, just as a placeholder. And then we go back to some backup materials. So I won't walk you necessarily through those, but just in case that's helpful in the discussion, I'm gonna go back actually to the memo. We made it through the proposed projects. There were a few more that are just kind of out there that are not fully developed. Well, some of these are not fully developed themselves, but they're even less developed, but have been identified in different areas that are on here that if you guys want me to work on before the next meeting, I can. If not, they can just go under future consideration and they can sit and we can continue to let them percolate. One being those habitat and conservation projects, that's Trina Lake area, and then the watershed property areas around the water treatment plant. That's something that Catchmack Heritage Lands Trust is kind of working on the background with the city on. And there was an opportunity or that we thought there was going to be opportunity coming up this year for it, but that funding did go away. There's still some potential funding. There's still some desire to see it. Certainly in the project, the statement of interest that was submitted today included looking again at that those Trina Lake properties, in an interest of conservation, whether that's a conservation easement or purchase of the properties or whatever that looks like. Just, we're still having community support for these projects. And we had 4 or 5 different projects, people from the community submit that project to the KB NER as a potential project for conservation. So definitely hearing about that from members of the community that they'd like to see those areas be preserved or conserved. And then the comprehensive tourism strategy is in the comprehensive plan, and it's been in there, since at least 2014. It's still in there. I will be frank and say I haven't wrapped my head around it, and I think we have a lot of other planning documents already happening. But certainly should stay as a future consideration unless you guys want to move it up sooner. And making sure that we don't lose track of it and that eventually that does need to be or should be addressed and worked on, especially if it stays in the comprehensive plan. We mentioned airport lighting, water and sewer. Again, this would be a collaborative project with ADOT, but it seems like we have a lot of other things that we're pressing with ADOT. So, it could also stay as a future consideration unless you guys want to see that moved forward sooner. And water truck replacement was one thing that did come up out of the asset management plan. It's not something that the crews really talked about a lot. They are not using the water tanker right now very often or very much. Can't remember if they used it last year at all. Even to fill the RV park, we fill up the RV park tank every year. They have taken to using, we have a trailer with a water tank on it, and they fill that and then they pump it and they transfer it. Just because the water truck that we have is also old and past its useful life. So seems like it just could be on in queue for as we move through some of these other equipments and projects and things that eventually that should be addressed too. Again, unless you guys want to see any of those move sooner. Thoughts?
Well, I think the pump truck kind of goes in hand. I know we're talking about the water truck, but I've been thinking about this. You know, you've got 75-gallon holding tanks and toilets, which isn't very much. And you've got a pump truck that it's at its end of its life. I think, you know, and we have more than just the outhouses that we pump,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. And so the vac truck is in the plan. This is a water truck for hauling water.
I know.
And
I was just thinking.
it's still needed.
I'd still thinking of the pump truck, I guess, but I'm thinking priority wise, the pump truck is more important than the water truck. I mean, they're making do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish I had a wish list, but I think the priority should be the pump truck over the water truck.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Heidi, I know the habitat and conservation projects, obviously habitat and conservation are a little different than watershed and wetlands, but they kind of go a little bit hand in hand because when you end up having that watershed and wetlands assessment, I mean, that is probably gonna, there'll come what'll come out of that is probably some no-brainer conclusions that you probably need to take some of those, recommend some of those areas for either critical habitat or future conservation. So I'm not sure how we wrap those two together, even if they don't need to be wrapped together, but I could definitely see those going hand in hand. And I do know there was some interest in that habitat and conservation, especially the Trina Lake watershed properties. I mean, we all know how important outside beaches to the communities. So
Excellent point, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I see that. I think we should probably move that up, the Trina Lake Conservation one.
Would you guys like to see a project description for that and for the draft plan?
yeah, I think that makes sense, is to kind of elaborate a little bit on that, so we've got something there.
Okay. I can look at if I can incorporate that into the watershed project, or else, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, or else do a standalone. I'll look at that further and
See
bring
what makes
something forward.
sense.
Yeah. Okay. I know that watershed properties has been in the comp plan for a long while.
Yeah.
So. Well, that's really what we have for the the CIP. We'll add in these additional projects and I'll do that one last project description unless anything else comes up, and then I can do that as well. With that, are there any other projects that you guys want to see included or removed from the plan? And are there any of these projects, existing projects, that you would like to see their range level updated? And keeping in mind also, then the last part of that discussion is, what do you want to put forward as legislative priorities for FY27? And this is gonna go back to your table of contents on page 7 of the packet.
Okay, and which page did we have last year's on? That was, did we say 129?
I believe so. Let me find it.
I have a question. You have the vac truck on a medium priority.
Hmm.
Should that be moved up? I know where there's a vac truck for sale right now
Mhm.
for 40-some thousand. And it's a jetter and it's got all the stuff, so I don't know.
I did also bring it up to our state revolving fund program. We have a loan with 100% forgiveness through the state revolving fund program for sewer improvements. And that helped us complete our lift station project. We do have some additional funds in the lift station project itself. There's about 31,000, but overall in that project, we have another couple hundred thousand available, that if once we have to scope it out, right? Do a nice scope, submit the application with the change, and then once approved, we could utilize those funds. And I did ask if we could use a portion of those funds for a vac truck and received positive feedback on that as well.
Yeah, and the only reason I say that is because we had lift station issues in the vac truck, and, you know, I'm just thinking that maybe to have this on board
I
sooner
agree.
than later
I agree.
might be in our best interest.
So move that
And I
to,
will get a hard number for what they want for that truck from Isaac's, but it's a good unit. But it does everything. It's a jetter, it's a vac, it's everything.
okay,
Yeah,
so
I
move
agree. I think that should move up.
My other question is on the backhoe.
Mhm.
The backhoe, rubber tire backhoe that we have, is it a replacement for that one?
Yes.
And what's the reason for that?
Age.
Age?
Age and wear and tear. It actually came up in discussion with Public Works this morning, when I was talking to them. And that was something that they, that in discussion, they said, well, the backhoe now, it does work. It needs some love and maintenance, more frequently. It needs love and maintenance. And it has a few quirks with it, due primarily, well, to the machine itself, but also due to age. But that was something that they mentioned, is if we did replace it, then we could sell the existing one.
And the reason I asked that is that the cat, if they was to go in there and recondition that piece of machinery, would it be less money than buying a brand new thing? Because they could go through that thing and bring it back up to new standards for possibly a lot less money than purchasing a brand new piece of equipment. And I don't know if there's money out there for that, but it'd be worth asking Caterpillar what it costs to go completely through this thing.
Excellent suggestion. I can include that on the project description as a
And if it's not Cat,
potential.
there's other
Mhm.
people in the business that do that, okay? and see what that cost would be versus new, because it's, if they went through it and reconditioned the whole thing, you might get this life out. I don't know how old the backhoe is. Is it a 5-year, 10-year? What's the age on it? Sometimes it gets to a point where parts availability and things start to be a problem.
Yeah, I
I don't
believe,
think it's that old.
I think it's a 90 or 95, isn't it?
I
It's-
thought it was a 99, but it will say, let me go to that, let me go to that page.
Yeah, I know it's got motor problems. It's had busted a lot of welding over the years. Yeah, it's got some
Yeah.
safety issues. It's
Oh,
definitely got a number of things.
98.
98.
Yeah, so it's maybe time to get rid of it. I don't know, but. And the same token, you know, if they'd go through the thing for 50 or $100,000 versus buying something for 400, 500,000, still get another 10, 15 years of service out of it. You know, it might be money well spent.
Not at 27 years old, I don't think. It's toast.
It's tired for reliable.
Tired for real.
I'm in favor of a new one.
I'll
I don't
second
think it
that.
can get rejuvenated.
Okay, so moving backtrack up with the list and any others that need to be moved and thoughts on legislative priorities for FY27.
So Eddie, real quick on legislative priorities. So last year we had the Jackaloff Bay Dock replacement. We had that Block Street sewer main replacement. We had the energy improvements for the fuel retail and distribution. And then we had equipment with the skid steer and forklift. And or yeah, skid steer with the forks and the brush hog, and then we had the planning project for the small boat harbor improvements. Those were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items we had on there last year. So based on some of the discussions about the dock and Block Street, I mean, what does it make sense to leave those on there? Or what's, I guess we might look to you to give us some guidance on this, on your thought process here.
Sure. So I definitely think that Block Street should wait. And it can still be a high priority, but maybe it's not a legislative priority yet. Skid steer and backhoe certainly seem like those are priorities. Or vac truck. I mean, I don't know how much equipment is too much equipment to ask for. And with that in mind, let me remember if it was Capsus that they didn't do equipment, but it was actually the federal government that did. Let me double check. We did it. We asked for it as part of a equipment bundle through Alaska Municipal League, which is why it's on there. But I don't think that we can ask through the state. So let me double check on
I
their
have another
rules.
question too. Why does the city not have a dump truck?
So we do have a Ford F 550, and it has a dump bed for refuse, but we don't have any type of commercial
Yeah, I'm
dump truck.
referring to a 10, 12-yard dump truck.
Yeah, we don't, and we don't, we're kind of in a place right now where we're not, where we would need to invest quite a bit of time and more money into our employees to get their CDL to be able to run a piece of equipment like that. So we don't necessarily have the employees or the workforce right now to run a CDL required vehicle. So yes, major equipment purchases are considered for the capital appropriations bill. for the state. So you kind of floating between those three: skid steer, backhoe, vac truck. The harbor seems like that's still important. Dock is important, but I do think that's one that, again, we can probably do internally. It's a smaller project. It's, 25,000, probably it's your high for doing some of those improvements that are needed. Plus, some of those bigger improvements are already included with the state in their AMHS long range transportation plan. So they've been identified by the state for the long range improvements, but we can do some short term improvements in the meantime. And then one that Councilmember Barber brought up to me as a priority that could potentially look at moving forward is the heavy equipment complex with archival storage out of the inundation zone, and looking at a planning project for that for the lot across from the city storage yard, and start making some gains on planning to put a building there and get our equipment off of the waterfront. I was informed again today while in that discussion with Public Works that they have moved the new grader back into the maintenance shop, and they plan on holding it there all winter, because this is a second winter where as soon as it starts to get a little wet and cold, we have errors with our electronics. So get it in the shop and let it warm up, and it's doing just fine. But definitely does not like to be outside on the water and the cold and the wet. And that's something that I've heard from a few council members and a few council members in the past about really trying to make sure that we get our equipment out of that area, especially if you guys want to use that building in that area for something else, right? Then we need to be able to have a storage area. So that would be my suggestion. If you wanted to move anything forward, I think that one would be beneficial and would really start, it would have a kind of, it would scaffold into other things that need to get done.
If I can say something, Heidi. I agree with you there. Just, I think that is a top priority. Instead of having those new infrastructure plans, because the city needs that heavy equipment, and there's all those vehicles. And so what is the city's plan for the heavy equipment and the vehicles if there's a potential plan for new infrastructure and new businesses?
Yeah, so if you see on page 20 of your packet, there is a update to that project that includes a $315,636 design and engineering estimate. That could be a good request to start making gains on that, especially if you're looking at getting new equipment, right?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to get that on there. I mean, we've talked about this actually for a while now too. I mean, we've got the equipment. If we're going to be getting more equipment, I mean, that's kind of what keeps the community going, is we got to have good equipment to be able to service, our basic needs for snow removal, maintaining roads, putting down topping, all of that stuff, dealing with drainage. So I think we definitely need to start looking at the planning from the planning aspect. I think this would be a good one to start identifying that as a priority and get that moving.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're gonna invest all this in brand new machinery. We should probably move this forward.
Another smaller one, if you guys, I mean, it depends on how many you want to put forward, but another one is that historic boardwalk repair and improvement. Like I said, we do have a $225,000 price tag that was a local quote. And we'll probably go pretty far to doing some of that work, maybe not all of it. It definitely depends on where your funding source is. The state's a little bit more lenient, doesn't have as many of the compliance requirements that come down from the federal side of things. So I guess that those would be my top two if I was going to move any, if suggest to move any of them up there, is maybe keep the harbor, move heavy equipment, consider if you want historic boardwalk in there or not, and then a piece of equipment or two would be my suggestion.
Heidi, when we're talking high priority, medium, and years, what are we looking at here? If it's medium priority, we talking in the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
Excellent question. So it's a 6-year plan, but obviously some things stay longer than others. The goal is to have some work on everything in 6 years. High priority, it'd be nice to have those ones completed within the 6 years. Medium priority to have them started and maybe completed if they're smaller projects, and then long range that we're continuing to work towards them.
So if we put the, excuse me, for example, the harbor master roof,
Mhm.
and we put that on legislative priorities, is how long is that gonna take?
If so putting it under a legislative priority means you're asking the state for money for it. And normally it's not a terribly long process. For instance, we got the money for safe roads. Let's see, we asked for money for safe roads in FY 24, and we received those funds. Ooh, halfway through. I can't remember the timeline. I think it was about a year. And then we
What if
received
we
those.
just did like high priorities, say we're gonna pay.
Yeah,
If we're gonna pay for this, the roof,
yeah,
Yeah.
out of pocket, so we just put that on high priority and. we find
exactly.
out. I mean, I'd like to see some of the high priorities start getting into the planning zone where they can get it done. And we can pick a day and say, hey, in August of 2026, we're gonna have a new roof on the harbor.
Yeah, this is the thing, when you're looking at time, I
Mhm.
mean, on these high priorities, this ought to be within a 2-year window,
Mhm.
realistically. Because it's like the vac truck, if we had another pump failure or lift station failure and you needed that truck, then you'd be scrambling to try to. So I'm just saying a 2-year.
Could end up costing more money,
I mean,
but
and that's still out there a ways, but if you put in for that money for the state and you got it within a year, then maybe 2 years is not unrealistic.
Right. Well, and you can have both. You can have legislative priorities and high priorities.
Yes.
They don't have to be the same thing. So you could have, for instance, harbor roof, municipal dock, and back truck as high priority projects, not asking for money, but just saying we're going to work towards those internally. Or if, a small pot of money comes available,
that,
use it. And then you can put some of those bigger ones, like the small boat harbor, the heavy equipment complex, and historic boardwalk toward legislative priorities. And then put your equipment in there wherever you want. I don't know. It's up to you guys how you want to do that, but you can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
So what was going back to, I'm just having a hard time remembering here, going back to your suggestion then for what we had just talked about for do you have what do you got? You're at Adobe right now. Is that the full version where you can type on there?
Yes, I can edit it.
That would be helpful,
Yeah. If I can type.
just so everyone's got a visual here. Doesn't have to be exact, and then you can tidy it up if everyone's in agreement.
And then do you guys want to entertain historic boardwalk or not? It's a legislative priority.
Nay.
Nay, okay. And then you want to keep the small boat harbor?
Yep.
And then any equipment
Back truck,
as a legislative request or as a high
high
priority?
priority.
Okay. So for a legislative request, do you want to keep skid steer or backhoe or both?
Skid steer from a reliable resource and backhoe as the second priority.
Something like that?
I have a question because I'm wondering how the backhoe comes second to the skid steer. Because I know the maintenance department uses the backhoe a lot for digging purposes, for water, key boxes, things like that, stuff
Mhm.
that happens. Whereas, and I'm not as familiar with skid steers, so if before I said yes, I'd go skid steer over the backhoe. Could somebody fill me in on the skid steer a little bit?
Sure. And they don't have to have, I mean, don't let the numbers fool you. It doesn't have to be prioritized. They can all be a priority,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
That's just, those were just a placeholder. But skid steer, from my understanding, because of its multi-use for the summer, being able to do some of the brush mulching, that's been becoming more and more a need in the community, and it takes a lot of time, as well as being able to maintain the boardwalk in the winter with snow and some of those smaller areas. Backhoe we do have, and it does need to be replaced. We don't have a skid steer. So I would assume that that's where Meg's reliable resource is coming from. But it's probably, six and one, half a dozen and the other.
Okay. Okay.
And really up to you guys. So if you want to
As long as
prioritize
they're
backhoe
there,
over
I
it.
think it's fine.
Okay. And then under high priority, so we'll move Block Street down, correct?
Yep.
And let me see if I can strike out. Maybe I can just delete. And we'll keep. And then we'll put harbor. Ooh. And okay. Did I lose any? And that kind of makes sense because then we're saying these high priority projects are something that, yeah, we may be able to do on our own.
Or smaller,
Or smaller.
smaller scale,
Yeah.
start some projects. Where did we put the bolt hollow? Did we put that on the medium?
Yes, boat haul out is still a medium priority.
We've done a lot of work to the trailers themselves on that, so it's not in,
Yeah, we did the trailer this last year and now looking at doing some of the electrical components in the storage yard, or sorry, in the boat storage yard, as well as replacing some of those, blocks in the ramp.
So, it's going on 8:30.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how much longer it's gonna take us to sit here and go through these things, but before we adjourn, there's things I'd like to bring up tonight for other business. So I don't know how much longer you guys want to spend at this. I don't know how much, I mean,
How much we have left? Is that what
Pardon?
you're saying? You're asking how much we have left?
And
I don't know that we can get through all of this tonight is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think if I'm not wrong, Mr.
Um,
Mayor, you guys are at the end. If this is a good list to you guys, and these can change. But what I can do is I'll bring this to you on the 15th in a resolution format with these priorities. And the updates to the plan as you guys have provided, and you can make any additional updates you need there. And if you want to postpone and have another discussion on it, you can, but I feel like you're close. Am I reading this wrong?
No, I think we are close. We've gotten quite a bit done here on this piece. What's typically what month do we try to get this finalized by?
November?
Perfect.
We're staying.
No,
Right.
legislative priorities do open in January, so we want to be ready by January, to be able to, because sometimes it's a short window. So being able to submit those projects, so if those are the 4 projects, they're in the plan, they're on the resolution, then you'll be good for that.
Okay, yeah, then just if we do go that route, then if you guys get a chance and there's something else that pops in or you want to see something else, then we can we can amend that on the 15th and get that tidied up. So, but I think we're getting pretty close here on this.
Okay, if you guys don't have anything else, I'll take that feedback for that you guys provided and I'll update it and I'll make sure to get this to you guys sooner than later so you have time to really look at it before the 15th.
And the other thing is, the high priority, I think, is an important part here, so this is kind of set to where we can look at this. There's a couple things here in the medium priority, I think, or low range, that I think should be moved to the medium. Just because of the time frame and we need to talk about it, and so.
Well, what are those, Jack? And I'll make a note of
Well,
it.
on the long range deal, the Susan Lake Susan access and improvement active pedestrian pathways, I don't know how far out you want to put that. I mean, is that something that,
You want to move that to medium?
well, to a medium, I would think, I don't know, I mean. We've talked about Lake Susan improving the thing and doing things about it, but now you're gonna. I mean, why have it on here if it's gonna be out that far?
Yeah.
No, we actually started doing some work on this. Was the first year where we've had a work party. We started getting some work, and I mean, I think there could be a lot bigger volunteer effort here to get that dealt with. If we start moving it up on our priority list. So again, it's not, it's a community type project, but I have no objection to putting that on the medium or mid range for sure.
Yeah, I second that. I think that could definitely get moved up.
Other suggestions, Jack?
No, I'm just looking at things that are tangible,
Mhm.
that is something that we probably could make happen without a huge expense, and we have
Mhm.
the tourist market.
Well,
that we
something you can
cater to, and
volunteer.
so, this is one of the things that might be something we should look at.
Okay. We'll move that up. Any other movement?
And we do have the new shop on high priority or mid-level? I can't see.
Legislative
We
priority.
have that on legislative.
Yeah.
Don't leave, Wally.
Yeah, and that was one of the ones that is going to get added in. So we had those
Yeah.
those 10 that we're not seeing here right now.
Yeah. Okay.
The heavy equipment complex. Sorry, did I miss something? What's getting added in?
No, the 10 projects that are that we talked about getting added into the plan.
Yeah, those will be added on
Yeah.
here. And this, so you'll have a lot more long range.
Nice. A lot more long range, high priority. No.
Medium.
Need some medium range, yep. Okay, do you guys want a work session prior to the meeting on the 15th to go over it, or do you feel like you've given decent direction in this discussion and it can just go into the meeting? I know your time is precious.
We're probably fine on the CIP, I think.
Okay.
And if everyone takes a look, make sure they read over that prior to that meeting. But I don't know how long it's going to take tonight to go over our council priorities.
Do you want to postpone that discussion?
I wouldn't mind if we were going to have a work session, doing an hour work session prior to that meeting, doing a 5 o'clock. And then we could knock that out prior to that meeting, or we could even put that on there as on that 6 o'clock meeting as an action item for discussion.
Okay. We can look at that agenda and get together on that.
I'm in favor with the mayor with that also, Heidi.
Okay.
Yeah, that would work great for me as well.
Yeah, and everyone can use this document. It's on there in the back on 129. I forgot what page. It says the very end of this packet is what we've had in the past. So there's a format. It's divided up into columns. So that would be a good thing for everyone to make sure they take a look at, and then we could can actually get through that pretty quick if everyone's tuned up on that document.
Page 131.
Yeah, 131.
And it definitely looks like it needs some probably fairly simple updates compared to the discussion that you guys had tonight. So
Yeah.
I can take the liberty of trying to do that as well, if that's helpful.
Okay, and if it makes sense, if we want to just have that as a discussion item during the regular meeting, I'm fine with that too. Take a look at how big that agenda is going to be and let us know whatever makes sense.
Okay, can do, Mr. Mayor.
Let's see if that's the case. Then we've got comments of the audience. Is there anyone in the audience, either online or in the audience, that wants to comment on the discussion topics tonight?
Wally, you got any comments?
Y'all are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Wally.
you.
Thanks, Wally.
I don't know if you caught that, Mr. Mayor, but we got a great job from Wally.
Yep. No, I heard that. Appreciate that.
And then no other comments or hands that I'm seeing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So Jack, now this is a work session. We don't really have a spot here. What were you trying to bring up here?
Now, can I talk about what I want to talk about?
It kind of depends. We got to make sure we stay on order here.
I have a number of things, and I'd like to bring it back to the council for reconsideration on the zoning on the 3 lots down past the pavilion to zone it as commercial residential waterfront. I think because of the housing issues around here that we talk about, where our employees are going to house, and, just to let the council maybe revisit this. It might be in the best interest of the community. The other thing is we have, Anthony that has a liquor store property. He's interested in purchasing a piece of the city property there by the boat ramp that would allow him for parking, maybe 30 to 50 feet, which those proceeds might be able to be directed towards a maintenance building. I don't know. I keep telling Heidi she's got to come up with the money, but maybe that would help. That being said, we have a couple of issues with, and I'm going to bring it up, is the water service thing with Jeff Erickson, that I think it'd be in the city's best interest if we paid that bill. It's a matter of principle because it wasn't known to him he was going to be responsible for it. And whether he's right or wrong or whatever, I don't think we want to get into litigation again. And that's where it's going to go if we don't make it right. And for the cost of that, what the city's actual expense in doing that versus having to battle him in court isn't worth it. So that would be one of the other things. The other thing I'd like to have the council consider is doing business on the state airport, that they would be tax exempt from sales tax doing business out there. The benefit would be is if you have employees working and living here, they will spend money in the town. But to tax it and make it to the point where maybe it's not competitive to do that business out there. And I can tell you, Ronnie, for one, might pull out of here is if he has to start paying taxes. And that is, I don't think that's in the best interest of the community. So those are things that I think we should look at. And the city doesn't offer any service at the airport. So there's no snow removal, there's no water, sewer, you know. But I can tell you that you talk about business incentives. We already have fuel prices here that are higher than anywhere else that you want to do. And when you have to be burdened with that and all the other things and then taxes, there's no incentive, at least not for me.
Is that it?
That's all I got to say about that.
All right. Well, given that, I would say that all four of those items would definitely need to be brought up with the manager, and she can guide you on which one of those. A couple of those sound like they would need to be sponsored, either ordinances or resolutions, for full council consideration. Couple of those may just need to be a discussion item with some full council direction that we've had similar issues with in the past. Heidi, what's your thought? I mean, yeah, we're certainly not going to do anything or take any action here, but would you agree with that proposal or that assessment that he needs to come in, talk to you on which ones would land on as an agenda item? Maybe all of them do, maybe two or three of them do, and then maybe one or two are taken care of administratively.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do think that a couple of them are administrative, a couple of them are already in the works from prior council direction. And certainly some of them, maybe even the last one could be a legislative action in the future. So we can talk about it. The tax one, we would have to look at that in terms of the borough and just how that relates. We might need to get a legal opinion on that one and see how we can move forward with it. But we can.
On the other deal, did you ever get a chance to find out on the responsibility of the utility company?
Yeah, and we're already working through that, so we can talk about that a little bit more later. Yeah.
I just don't want it to
No.
down the wrong road.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for bringing those up. We'll obviously get some action on a couple of those here in the future, and then hopefully the rest can be solved administratively. So, anybody else got anything before we adjourn tonight? Okay, sounds good. Thanks for everyone's participation. I think our CIP will be looking good here on the 15th when we go to let's see. So that on the 15th, would that be introduced then, Heidi?
It's a resolution, so
Oh.
it can be adopted.
Gotcha.
On the 15th, if it looks like it's ready.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. No, perfect. All right, unless there's anything else, we will go ahead and adjourn the work session. And next meeting is going to be on right now, scheduled for the 15th.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. That's it. We will go ahead and adjourn the work session, and thanks everyone for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hey Jeremiah, how's the eye doing?
It's healing slowly.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
So, other questions?
Oh, hold on.